This past weekend, I had the privilege of attending an EdCamp Leadership Summit in Parsippany, New Jersey. So EdCamps are all about spontaneity by nature. The agenda is built that day on the spot, and the sessions are not presented but facilitated. This facilitation is key because it's the difference between sort of a ping pong presenter conversation and a really healthy conversation between the participants. So it made sense that we spend Saturday morning of the summit engaged in work around improv. Anthony, and I'm not going to try to say his last name because I don't feel confident in my ability, and I'm just going to show it to you. So Anthony, this guy, is a founding member of Freestyle Love Supreme and co-founder of Speechless, and info for both of those organizations are in my description down below, and also their links are here. And if you don't know who Anthony is, you definitely need to check him out. We talked about the science of improv and what went on inside your brain when you're having these impromptu conversations. Or if you've read my work, you know that I often refer to my time in the theater because I feel that it has done a lot to sort of shape who I am as an educator and a presenter. And I think especially fondly of my time doing improv. So the EdCamp movement is important because it's sort of refreshing our expectations regarding professional development. And a lot of that has to do with the improvisational nature of the sessions. And it left me kind of wondering how these skills impact our classroom. So we are teachers or educators that go to an ed camp, we engage in these really thoughtful conversations, and then we go back to our classrooms, and then, what do our classrooms look like? What's going on in our classrooms, and how could we use this skill of thoughtful conversation in our classrooms? So after toying around with that idea a little bit, I came up with 3 keys to successful improv, whether at an ed camp or in the classroom. In an improv skit, the actors rally around a common theme to move the story forward. So sometimes they'll ask for the audience members to call out a character's name or ask for feedback from the audience to sort of get this theme established. Sometimes they pick a theme out of the hat, or sometimes they just sort of have a running theme that they use throughout all of their skits. In a ed camp, this common theme is established by the topic that's put on the session board. And in a classroom, the common theme, honestly, could be, I think the ideas are sort of endless here, but, we could have a discussion around the theme of a story, and that could be a fictional story, or it could be an informational story, like a current event story that was either brought up by the students or brought up by the facilitator, or it could just be a scientific phenomenon. But the key here in EdCamp and in your classroom is that your real goal is sort of igniting a discussion, not just delivering information. So you want to set up an environment where the participants are ready to talk to each other, whether they already have a common knowledge around the topic or whether they're gaining it through the conversation. We want to make sure that there's a discussion and not just dissemination of information. Key number 2 is create equilibrium. And I really loved this word. This was a word that Anthony used on Saturday morning, and he talked about, making sure that all members of the group are equal. For everyone to feel equal, it needs to be sort of more than just a mandate, right? Like, we can't just say everybody in the group is equal, and then as the facilitator or the teacher in the room sort of demand the attention of the group. That would make not everyone feel equal. So as the facilitator, we want to make sure that we're sitting in a level space with everyone else. But if everyone's sitting on the floor, then we're sitting on the floor too. We want to make sure that our space is equal to the space of the participants. And then I think the other huge thing here is trust, right? Like, we're not going to feel comfortable being equal participants in the conversation if we don't feel like we're in a trustworthy or trusting environment. So at an ed camp, I think that there's sort of like this inherent trust because we are with like-minded educators. Everyone has sort of come out for the day with the idea that they want new learning, and it just feels like a safe place inherently. but in a classroom, you're definitely going to have to work to build that trust a little bit more. And like I said, making yourself part of the conversation, being in the same space as your students will really help with that. I think that, probably the first time right out of the gate where you're trying to have a conversation like this, it may not be the smoothest. But as students continue to be offered opportunities to have these kind of conversations, I think that their trust will grow as they learn that it's okay for them to speak their minds and be wrong, and no one's going to jump in and correct them on the spot or make them feel bad about this new idea that they have just shared. So the third key is empathize. And I feel like this word empathy keeps coming up over and over again in educational conversations. And I'm really thrilled about it, because I feel like there is so much work that we need to do in order to sort of move our society forward. And I think that by building empathy in our students and in ourselves, that's really going to help us do that work. So when you're in when you're in a conversation, again, whether in an ed camp or in your classroom, you want to make sure that you're listening to the words that are coming out of the other participants' mouths. And, a little bit more than just listening to their words, you want to make sure that you give yourself a moment to stop and reflect after you hear what they've said. I think that sometimes we react to the surface of the words and don't always listen and sort of grapple with their meaning before we automatically respond. So building in that pause is super important. Also, observe the room and the body language of the participants in the room. Are they, sort of closed off or stressed out, or are they open and listening to the conversation? And then after making those observations, think about why people may not be engaged, and then is there anything you can do as a participant or as the facilitator to change that? And if you do need to jump into a conversation to either redirect slightly or engage another participant or engage more people, make sure that whatever you say sort of throws the conversation back to the participants. And it's also going to be so critical as a classroom teacher paying attention in these conversations, because that's going to be how you plan your future coaching sessions with your students or your future instruction, and empathizing with them in those conversations, thinking about what they're thinking, trying to feel what they're feeling. That's really going to help you design your future instructional moves to best meet their needs. So your ability to think on your feet and facilitate rather than just lead a conversation can be really tricky. It's definitely a skill that needs to be practiced, and it's something that I'm still definitely working on. I personally have a very hard time with awkward silences. But I'm going to keep working on that.